There is such a stigma around talking about money, and on top of that, society doesn't encourage women to manage and understand their finances. Elvest aims to challenge that by having honest conversations about money in a judgment free environment, which is exactly the vibe of the conversation I had with Ashley Bleckner, an Elvest private wealth advisor, in our episode today. Today, we're going to discuss why women should get a prenup, the great wealth transfer coming our way, and how you can take control of your family's finances today. Without further ado, here is Ashley Bleckner. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ashley. We're so excited to talk to you today. So let's get right into it. Tell us about Elvest. What is it and why should we care?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you about all things money and women and setting them up for success. Elevest helps women at its core build and manage their wealth at any stage, from the first time investor to the high net worth individuals. So basically, from their very first dollar to their $100 million. And everybody's different in where they're at in their money journey. And so being able to support them with a digital investing offering, one-on-one financial planning, or what people are used to in sort of that traditional wealth management lens, we're here to help them and be that guide throughout the process.
Amazing. So tell me about the women at Elvest. Like, are we talking to all women? I heard $1 to millions of dollars. Like, who's the perfect person to be calling Elvest and saying, help me?
So when Sally Krawcheck founded the firm, a decade ago, the idea was let's help women with their very first dollar, right? The industry has not been designed for us. And she wanted to create something that removed the barriers of entry. And so she started out by creating this digital offering for women just getting started. And through that process, she had someone reach out that basically said, you know what? I love this. I want to be a part of this. I'm tired of supporting companies that haven't supported me. I'm tired of supporting companies where I'd be worried my daughter would be chased around the desk. But I need something more. I need something more sophisticated. So that's when the wealth management arm of the business came to be. So the mission is the same across all arms of Elevest, just the execution is slightly different based on what somebody needs and the complexity of their situation.
Amazing. So we're all excited. We love Elvest. What does it actually look like to go to Elvest? What do I do? What does this look like?
So it depends on which side of the offering that you're in need of. I encourage people to just have an initial conversation. So whether you're looking at the digital side, the one-on-one financial guidance, or whether you're looking at the wealth management side, we do offer a complimentary call to get a better understanding of who you are. What are you looking for? What is going to help you feel more confident, have more clarity around your financial picture? And then through those complimentary calls, we can really steer you into the direction that makes the most sense to help you execute on those goals. And it could be any side of the business depending on that.
Amazing. What if we have like zero to no practice talking about money? It's a taboo topic. I'm
Yeah.
really scared to say I spend $300 a month on coffee. I really don't want to be judged. Like, what does this process look like when I get on the phone and talk to somebody?
So we get it. We've been there. And I would say the majority of the industry has kind of created that stigma, right? From when we are young and our brothers are told, be aggressive, trade, climb the monkey bars. And our sisters are told, don't dirty your dress, budget, be careful, right? We get these messages and they continue on through our entire lives. And you go to a financial advisor, you think about it as this jargony conversation, even money media articles geared towards women are in most cases around guilt and shame and budgeting, right? And so we expect that to be the conversation we have with an advisor. But that's where Elevest has really kind of tried to flip the industry on its head and engage with women where they're at. And so this is truly we get it because we've been there. We're here to relate. We're here to understand. And everybody's different in what they're trying to accomplish with their money. And so we want to understand that so we can help them be effective.
And is it just for women, or do you guys have male clients too?
So it's designed by women for women, but we do have our male clients. In the financial planning, we unfortunately kill them off sooner, but that's longevity tables. That's not us. But I would say on the digital side, it's very high percentage women. On the wealth management side, I would say about 40% of our clients are men.
That's so cool.
Because it's interesting, right? And it's a mix of women sometimes marry men. And so they become clients because of that. But I even have some single male clients who again care about this stuff. Maybe they have a daughter, maybe they're just passionate about these things. And so we love our male allies, but really it's geared towards women.
God, that's so cool. And I commend that 40%. Just thank you. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all excited. We're going to run over to Ellevest. And by the way, if at minimum you're like, I'm not ready to talk about my finances because
Yeah.
I can't even look at my own account without panicking. By the way, Ellevest has the most amazing newsletter. It's called What the L,
Mhm.
adorable. And the content is so juicy and so direct and so inviting. I just encourage everybody, at minimum, please go subscribe to that newsletter. You're going to learn things about things you didn't even know you needed to know, but you're
Yes.
always going to walk away with something really interesting. So, also, huge,
I
huge
love our
advocate for
newsletter
that.
too. I can't take any credit for it, but our newsletter is great. We've got a great Instagram that's engaging and sharing information as well. We have group coaching sessions where you don't necessarily have to talk, you can learn. And so we're trying to create an environment that's inclusive, that helps people come into this conversation.
Okay, so tell me all the reasons why somebody needs to care about their finances when they're dating. They're besides working and they're like, okay, I need to go figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life and who I'm going to spend it with. And they decided just go on some dates and they're like, money's really important to me and I want to make sure that I find the right person that I can spend my life with and that we're on the same page from a financial perspective. What does
Yeah.
that look like? How do we talk to partners about money and where do you think we should start?
I mean, the sooner the better, quite honestly. And I get it, it's awkward.
Yeah.
We are socialized to say, I mean, think about these phrases. Money is the root of all evil. Money can't buy you happiness. We hear these things and we're told it's unladylike to talk about money, right? There's shame around it, as we talked about. And so we need to break through because it is important. This is our livelihood. This is our future. One of the leading causes of divorce is money. And so the sooner we can make sure we're on the same page, the better. So go ahead and talk about it on the first date if it's something that you feel comfortable with. If you're already into a relationship and you haven't, there's ways and tools to start that conversation. But my biggest piece of advice is having the initial conversations prior to things going wrong, because we tend to not talk about it until we're forced to. And then it has this negative stigma. Understandably, there's something bad going on, but we're having these tough conversations, which just further reinforces the bad messages around money. So if we can start and have it be a regular check-in, a normalized conversation, then it's way less intimidating.
For sure. And how do we start those conversations? So I know remove the shame, but like what does that actually look like? And I'm sure it depends on what we're trying to discuss, right? Like for
Yes.
me, one of the things that I like to talk about with my partner is like the future, right? What
Mhm.
are we going to do about this? How do we plan for this? And so for people, especially that are engaged, they're with a serious partner, they're
Mhm.
probably going to spend a lot of time together in the future and or plan through retirement together.
Mhm.
How do we have these conversations early and often and make sure that we stay empowered and comfortable the whole time?
So I think having it be a comfortable environment. So that can be setting the tone, setting the right vibe where this isn't a negative conversation. This is, hey, like, I love you. I want to make sure we're able to hit all of the goals that we want. Let's sit down and understand what those actually are and how we're going to accomplish them. And in some cases, it's sitting around the dinner table with a glass of wine and just talking about it. Sometimes it's getting somebody, an outsider, a third party, to help us, whether it's an attorney on the prenup or an advisor on the financial picture. But being able to start these conversations and usually starting with, hey, here are my goals. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's where I'm at today. And here's where I want to go. That's when you can start to really navigate, how do we get there together and have a strategy in place. And again, sometimes you guys can do that individually. Great. There's wonderful resources out there. There's books. LFS has a bunch of articles. But you can also have an advisor or that attorney kind of play that role too, to help engage in that conversation and make it less awkward. And then it becomes normalized from there.
Absolutely. And at HelloPrenup, we're really trying to arm people with the resources before they even bring in that third party, because we
Yes.
do believe if you can do the reps at home, you're the one that's going to be stronger and be able to make it a part of your daily diet. And so HelloPrenup also wants to help couples make
Mhm.
sure that they have the resources that they need. And one reason why we love prenups is because it's basically just a guided conversation where people talk about all of the juicy things related to what do they want to have happen in their marriage, but especially when it comes to money. So, based on your experience, what do you think couples should be talking about as they are entering into their marriage?
So I would say getting on the same page as far as
Right.
all kinds of goals. right? Where do we want our work to look like? What do we want our living circumstances to look like? What do we want our kids to look like? Do we want to be, funding their education or not? Having these conversations early just helps set the stage. Also, how are we going to combine finances? And you don't have to necessarily. Let's start there. But if you do, there's not one right way. You could do it 50-50. You could do it pro rata, where if, she makes 80% of the income, he makes 20%, maybe that's how we're contributing into things. And so it's not a one size fits all. It's a matter of feeling like you two are on the same page, you're at this together, and you feel comfortable with the decisions that are made. And it's not just default, this is how it happens. It's an intentional conversation that you can come back and it can change later on. But I also want to point out that you don't have to combine finances. I see so many people later in life where it's healthier for them to keep separate, right? This is what I've built. This is how I feel comfortable spending. Maybe we have a family checking account that covers the mortgage or rent or what have you. But there's all kinds of different tactics and strategies, and each one is different for each couple.
What are some common reasons why you would recommend couples keep their finances separate?
I like the idea of having some confidence in where you're at today, right? So, for example, I am a believer, and what I chose to do for myself was premarital assets were separate property, and post-marriage assets were a community property. And so for me, I spent decades building to where I was, and I wanted to be able to maintain that and do it in the way that I felt was right for me. I wanted to be able to manage it directly, all of that good stuff. Whereas as we combine things, as we become a family, I see that more intertwined. But there's something to be said about just knowing that you have that. Even as an individual, we talk about having an emergency fund or an oh shit fund, right? Something that is just there to make us feel better in a way. And having some separate property, especially something that you had built up prior to marriage, can help have some of that as well. Also, just people have different values of spending, right? Like my husband loves the bougie things in life, whereas I love a good fancy meal, right? He's going to buy the nice surfboard, I'm going to buy the nice dinner. And so being able to have that individualized has also been helpful too.
That's a really good point. Like, I know plenty of my girlfriends that are like, we've combined all our finances. And then my husband is like, is there something you want to tell me about this $1,200 Botox bill? And she's like, no, there's nothing that
Exactly.
I want to tell you about. And if you have any questions, we could talk about it over that fancy PlayStation that you have sitting. You know what I mean? Um,
Exactly.
Incredible. Okay, cool, cool, cool. We love it. Same reasons in prenups. So most of our customers, 80% of them keep their premarital property separate. And then,
Really?
yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay.
80%, they're just like, what I'm bringing in is mine, what you're bringing in is
Which I
yours.
get.
And if we want to do anything in between, we'll be really particular about it. But
Mhm.
they also choose to keep most of their marital assets separate as well, aka no marital assets.
Mhm.
It's really interesting to see the trend moving this way, and
Mhm.
I think it's something we were talking about earlier, which is like it's a comfortability, peace of mind thing of like we have money, but at the end of the day, I can go spend it on Botox, and you can't
Yes.
say anything, and you're going to go buy that nice Ford, and we're going to be just fine. Everything's going to exist. Tell
Well,
me, yeah, go
so
ahead.
one thing I just want to jump in and talk about in that regard is I think we're getting over the stigma that men are supposed to manage the money, which by the way isn't good for men or women,
Right.
right? It's for women, we are delegating that responsibility. And the majority of the time, when the money comes back to us, whether through a divorce or through death, there's a negative surprise. But it's also not great for the guys because they are now in this position where they're expected to know something that they may or may not know something about.
Right.
And so I think that stigma is evolving as well. That expectation is evolving as well. And that probably is contributing to the 80% that you guys are seeing.
God, that's so true. Well, and another thing is a lot of women are entering into the marriage with more. And
Yes.
so, because
Yes.
of that, it's created this dynamic of like, I actually am pretty financially savvy and I've been doing
Mhm.
quite well by myself thus far. And I just want
Mhm.
to make sure that I can maintain that energy and that momentum once we say I do and kind of legally do this thing.
Yeah.
Are
Well,
you guys seeing the same thing on your end? Yeah.
we are, but we also, because we work with so many incredible women, that's our focus. We
Yeah.
might be a little bit,
A little
people that
biased.
self-select to work with LFS tend to fall into that segment. But there's also something beautiful about knowing that you're in the marriage because you're choosing that person every day. not because you feel stuck or you're worried about the money. Like you're choosing intentionally to be with that person every day. And I find that to be beautiful.
Exactly. That's a really, really good point. It's sort of like, let's have the financial conversations now and get them over with so that we can just really enjoy each other. You can tell me
Mhm.
I'm beautiful with my Botox, and I can tell you how good you are on PlayStation. Exactly. Um, Tell me about women that are just entering into their financial planning phase and why it's a really, really, really big deal for them to consider a prenup, even if they don't have anything to their name today.
A lot of it has to do with you don't know where you're going to be in 1 year, let alone 5, 10, 30 years, right? A lot can change as far as who you are, what your goals are, what your financial situation is, right? We're seeing women in the workforce taking on those C suite roles and really driving and being the primary breadwinner in a lot of cases. And so I think from our own personal choices and where we end up and where we could end up, it's nice to have these conversations early and plan for what could be. The other part that I don't think enough people are having a conversation around is the great wealth transfer, which is the idea that over the next few years to decade, a significant amount of wealth is going to be transferring into the hands of women. And that is from inheritance in a lot of cases. And just by 2030, we are expecting to see $30 trillion now in the hands of women. And that is powerful on so many lenses because the great wealth transfer has the potential to reshape society and society's beliefs about women and wealth. And this will affect all of us, whether we're the direct recipient of an inheritance or not.
Tell me a little bit more about that. So, like, what are some things that we could see potentially happening now that women have more money? Does that mean more control over the outcome of certain things? Does that mean more women starting businesses? Like, where are we betting that this is going to go?
All of it. This is a fundamental shift. And we see that when women receive a financial windfall, their money confidence actually improves. This is not, there's not a disconnect of women in confidence with money based upon all the assumptions that we have less money. It's the gender wealth gap itself that drives this lack of confidence that we have with money. And so when women do start to take command of their money and have this through inheritance, a windfall, or even just growing it themselves, it completely wipes out this lack of confidence that we have with it. It's
So
amazing.
interesting.
It
It's
is. It
so
is.
interesting
And the
because
other part, real quick, the other part is that our research, we survey women all the time, right? We want to understand who they are versus just make assumptions about them, like I think a lot of people do. And the research shows that people with a financial plan have over 2.5 size the net worth of those who don't. And so being able to start early is really going to compound over time and set us up for success.
that is absolutely incredible. And we're not going to argue with data because it's fabulous and there's nothing to argue
We
with.
love data.
We, we,
Love data.
we love the data. Okay, so what else is the data saying? So if you have inheritance coming down, you're generally going to be more confident. But what does that mean? So now we have this money. It means we need to go to Ellevest and we need to talk to them and say, what the heck do I do with all this money? Like what's your go-to strategy when we get this inheritance?
Having the conversations as early as possible, I think, is key. I also think that there's something to be said about not feeling rushed into a decision. There can be this decision free zone where you are processing and then being able to start to have these conversations intentionally are going to yield the best result. But one of the most interesting pieces of data that we found is receiving a financial windfall beyond increasing women's confidence around it. It has actually led to a higher likelihood that they may leave their partner as a result of it. And which tells me that they may not have a prenup or they're feeling like this decision of whether they're going to stay with their partner or not is dependent on the financial situation.
Wow.
Yeah,
So basically, what I'm hearing is that with money, we have more choices. And when we have less
100%.
money, we have less choices. And therefore, we're very reactive when we have less money versus being proactive when you have more money, right? Like I can take control of what I need in life and use money as a tool to be able to provide for myself and make sure that I always have something.
Yeah.
All the more reason to consider a prenup because in a prenup, you can protect future you. And that is the most understated topic when it comes to money because
Mhm.
so many people think that when you enter into a prenup, it means you're just protecting what you have today. And people
Yes,
are like, I'm just in my 30s with my BMW and Cheez-Its. I don't have anything. Like, why do I need to care about a prenup? Well, this is a really
Mhm.
good argument for why you need to
It
care.
does. It does.
inheritance is coming down the pipeline, and there's future you where you're probably not even in your highest earning career
Mhm.
years yet. You could very well do great things in your career that you don't even know about, and so having that prenup is going to protect you. I was actually talking to a woman yesterday where they were high school sweethearts and they got married, and now she's like a producer. She's doing
Love
so
it.
well. She's kicking
Love it.
ass and taking names. And at the end of the day, she's kind of sitting back and going like, what would happen if we got a divorce now? And
Mhm.
and the what if is just unfortunate,
Mhm.
because what if you just talked about money and a prenup a long time ago and normalized the conversation, and then
Mhm.
that way everybody goes into the marriage with peace of mind.
Absolutely.
Based on your experience, and with the women and men that you're helping at Elevest, is there ever a time where a couple has come to you and said, hey, we're really considering a prenup, and you ever said, I don't think it's a good idea?
No.
Okay.
Normally, do I not just have a blanket one-word answer with a period at the end? But this is one of those cases.
Incredible. Tell me why. Because an attorney would be like, well, it depends on your state laws. And if your state laws apply to you, blah, 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 blah.
But similar, you
I'm
don't know where you're gonna go, right?
right.
There's so much that can change over the course of your life. And even if things change down the road, it's initiating the conversation that you should be having anyways. No matter what, it's having these topics that we may or may not have already talked about, but really putting pen to paper and outlining. And so it's a reference document, even beyond the legal component of it. It's a reference document for us and our partners to know what we're trying to accomplish and just have these intentional conversations early.
I love that you call it a reference document, like a source of truth of like,
Yes.
we're agreeing to
Yeah,
this, which I think are the most romantic vows you really could ever
I agree.
have. It's like, let's just put those vows on paper and prove it
And then read them
and read them.
as we're getting married.
Just stand up there with your 40-page document. Absolutely. We are so here for it. Please do it. Okay, incredible. What about couples that are already married? Do you see a lot of couples coming to you and saying, hey, we're considering a postnup? How do we even think about this?
So I don't see them coming to me to discuss the postnup, but it is a conversation that I bring up to people if they don't have a prenup. Attorneys can talk about the effectiveness of a postnup versus a prenup, but I think again, going back to having that conversation, it's helpful. So I don't see a lot of people asking about it, but I also don't think it's a bad idea.
And what would be a typical use case for somebody saying, "Hey, we're doing the post-up process." Like what's like the motivation behind those clients and why they're doing it?
Sometimes they've seen a family member go through a divorce, or sometimes there's going to be a big financial change in their lives. Whether it's, hey, I'm going to start this business, or whatever the case might be. But if you start to see something change, it might trigger that conversation being had.
And is there an inheritance too? Like now I'm thinking with this the
Hmm.
great wealth transfer, we have a lot of women sitting up and clutching their pearls and saying like, "Oh, maybe I need to go get a post-up because
Yeah.
I want to protect that inheritance that I didn't think about protecting in
Yeah.
the marriage."
Well,
Uh,
and so right now, when we survey women, 45% of women that we've surveyed have either received an inheritance or expect to see an inheritance. And that's only the ones that have had a conversation around it. There's a lot of families that are not necessarily communicative with their children or their family members around what inheritance actually looks like. So I would go as far as saying that 45% is actually skewed lower than what the reality is.
Amazing. Another thing we've been thinking about a lot at HelloPrenup, and we're an all-female team, by the way, too,
Mhm.
so we're
Yeah.
constantly in communication about all of the things going on in the world. The other thing is fertility. So I
Mhm.
think it's like 1 in 6 women now that have some sort of, fertility issues or some family
Mhm.
planning issues. We're seeing a lot more of that from the prenup side as well, where people are coming into marriage with embryos or some sort of like protection. And so are you guys seeing a lot of women that are coming to you and saying, "Hey, we really want to start a family. Like, what should we be doing from a financial planning standpoint?"
Absolutely. That's a conversation that we're having on all sides of the business at Elevest. We actually this summer came out with an article and hosted a webinar around that topic because we're seeing it more and more frequently. I think a lot of times we want to feel like we know what's going on with our own financial situations, that we feel secure enough to go into the child conversation, and we want to plan around it. It just helps us feel better going into these types of decisions, knowing that there's a plan in place. We also find as women, we tend to be that A+ student. And so we want to know every single detail, every single component of things before we make that decision. And so having these conversations and planning around it helps them move into that.
What are some ways that women can start planning for their financial future? Because one of the things that I that kind of hit me over the head that's been obvious is women's birth years end earlier than a man's. But at the same time, that's also when they're giving up their career earning years to
Yeah.
raise the children. How
Yeah.
do you financially plan for that? Like, what are some things that people should be doing in their 20s? What are some things that people should be, and men to support their female counterparts?
I think the earlier we can start, the better. The power of compounding is absolutely there, and needs to be discussed. But this is exactly why Sally created Elevest. Is if you go to a traditional financial advisor, they are going to plan based on their assumptions, which are geared around what a man, typically a white man, actually is executing on, versus taking into account everything that you just brought up. The fact that we tend to live 6 to 8 years longer, the fact that unfortunately our incomes peak sooner, the fact that we're typically the ones taking career breaks, whether it be for raising children or even aging parents and their health issues. And so being able to incorporate these variables into our financial planning, our financial modeling is really protecting ourselves for what we've seen women go through time and time again. But, the earlier you can start, the better. And that just allows you more flexibility and options down the road because money is power, whether we like it or not, right? Money is the power to leave that bad job. Money is the power to leave that bad relationship. Money is the power to really do what we want and have options.
And especially with fertility, if the 1 in 6 need to bring in some sort of help to raise, or I'm sorry, to produce children or
Mhm.
whatever. Like, I think I saw it was like ten to $15,000 per cycle for IVF.
Yeah.
And it's like these unexpected costs that, while you're emotionally so excited to build your family, you're also going to be just as stressed out by the price tag, which
Yes.
could dip into your savings that you had just for retirement, right? It's like there's just so
Exactly.
much more for women to be thinking about.
Yeah.
And so I'm with you. The earlier they save, the better.
Mhm. Well, and I have so many friends that have gone through that process, right? And unfortunately, insurance doesn't really cover it. And so it becomes so important for us to plan around that. How are we going to fund that? How are we going to structure it?
Do you see women taking on the majority of the saving when it comes to these things, or of the male clients that you have, are they proactively thinking about saving money for their children and or to support their wife in birth?
Sometimes, sometimes not. Again, I think the type of person that self-selects via LMS is a very special person, which I
So true.
love. It makes it a dream to work at this place. So I would say, they are, but I don't necessarily know that that's the norm or if that's the
Right.
exception. But I do see, being able to save for, having children and then that child's future is very relevant for both genders.
Is there something that you wish more men would understand when it comes to women's finances?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, I've got one.
Okay.
So I think men in society tend to think that women are risk adverse, right? That we don't want to take on as much risk as the men. But that's actually not true. We are risk aware. We want to understand the risk before we move into it, right? So picture you're at a meeting with a male advisor, a couple, and that advisor is talking about alpha and this new product and, schmoozing it all. And even if the guy doesn't get it, he'll put pedal to the metal, right? Whereas women want to actually understand, okay, what does this actually mean? Right? Or, the famous question of what is your risk profile, right? Where a man might just take an educated guess. The female wants to say, hey, you know what? That sounds like a pretty important question. Let me actually understand what that means and move into it intentionally. And so I think getting over the stigma that women are not risk adverse, we just want to understand in plain English what this means is powerful. The other part that I think is really interesting is while women also want a high financial return, they also want their money to have a positive impact on society. They understand that where we spend our money, where we invest our money is casting a vote in a way. And that's a power, right? And so they want to be intentional with that. not at the cost of return. That's the 1980s stigma of like, hey, it's one or the other. These things are not mutually exclusive. And so they want to understand, what is this dollar doing for me and my family, but what is it also doing for society and the planet?
All I kept thinking about is how women are gatherers and men are hunters. Like, we need to gather more information.
Yes.
And men
Yep.
are like, yes, I will attack the prey and I will do what you say.
It goes
we
back to the fundamental principle of who we are.
It's
100%.
so true. God, and
100%.
it's so nice to know that, because you just articulated something that I think we can all deeply feel, but it just
Mhm.
gets underplayed. It's like, no, we just need a couple more questions before we sign on the dotted line. And then, by the way, I likely outperform my male counterparts, but we'll talk about that later. Um,
The data says that. The
the
data says
data,
that.
lean on the data. Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so we've talked a lot about engaged couples. We've
Yes.
talked a lot about we're entering in one of the most like financially big decisions we've ever made.
Yeah.
Zooming out to people who have been there, they've done the marriage, it's not working out. They're just, for whatever reason, they need to dissolve it. What does it look like to untangle finances? And we can start with folks that didn't have a prenup.
It's a lot messier. To be honest with you, it's a lot more challenging, and it's dependent on what state you're in, whether it's a community property state or not. And so the answer earlier, where you're like, an attorney would be like, well, this is where that answer is very relevant.
So true.
Because it plays into, how long have you been married? What has the dynamic been? There's so much that goes into it. If you don't have a prenup, it's just tougher. And you start to see more litigation and just people being messier about it, because it's undefined. The lines are blurry at that point, and you're drawing the lines in an emotional state.
Besides, I wish I would have had a prenup. Do you see women, every time I'm at the hair chair, I like think it's my therapist. And so I'm just like, I'm sure you get treated the same way. We're in
Yeah.
their emotional crisis. What other things are they saying to you besides, I wish I would have got a prenup? Is there anything they wish they would have done differently?
They wish they would have been involved in the finances. They wish they wouldn't have just like defaulted to, typically the women take care of the budgeting and the cash flows, and the guys take care of the investing. And we do that because we don't want to intrude. We don't want to seem like we don't trust them. We don't want to seem like we're doubting them. But that's where and that's something that you can do today. If you're married, you don't have a prenup, start to engage in those conversations today. Be a part of the meetings, have a login for the investment accounts, be able to understand, okay, what is this invested in and why? Is this growth? Is this income? Like, what are we trying to accomplish with these choices? And that's something that you can do today.
When it comes to retirement, because now I'm thinking long term, which could affect anybody and everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Do women tend to have like, this is how I want to plan my retirement, or is that like a joint thing? I don't even know how to think about this from an LFS perspective. But are people like, I want to make sure that we have this in retirement, or a lot of your clients like, I'm really focused on making sure that I'm okay no matter what for my retirement?
I would say it's usually the we conversation, but the
Nice.
execution is going to vary based on each individual couple. So it's dependent on the situation. But I think what you also kind of get to, which is an important conversation of, if you're going through this process, I think it's really important to understand that a dollar of cash is different from an invested dollar with unrealized gains, is different from an illiquid asset like a house, is different from a retirement dollar, which has a whole different tax strategy. Right. And so as you're going through the process of a divorce, understanding what each of these means and not just taking one or the other, but understanding the after tax and the liquid value of each asset is really important in the separation of assets.
And what about women who have been widowed? What does that even look like when they come to you? I know it all depends on where they're at in states and blah blah. But what are you generally seeing, and is there anything that we can learn from that?
It's similar in that in a lot of cases, they've deferred that responsibility. And so they're coming in blind. And the toughest time to learn about money, to get engaged with the money, is when you are going through something traumatic. That can be a death, or that can be a divorce. And so when we have clear mind, when we're really able to grasp these concepts and understand early on, is really helpful. But we do see that same structure where, you don't want to rush into a decision right when somebody passes away. You don't want to run into a decision right when you get a divorce. but you do want to start to take command and giving yourself the grace of you're not necessarily able to learn at the same capacity while you're going through a trauma as you are when you're not. So it's just one more justification of getting started sooner and having these conversations sooner. One of the things that we have increasingly found important as well is when women want to invest in other women. And so there's the ability to do so through all sides of Ellevest. On the digital investing side, through ETFs and mutual funds, we have the ability to really invest with intention, invest in companies that are supporting women and divest from companies that are not supporting women. And then on our private wealth side of the business, we have private alternatives, non-stocks and bonds that are truly getting money in the hands of women, whether it's that female founder, whether it's, we have this incredible one that focuses on renovating properties, multifamily affordable housing projects, mostly in the Carolinas. They renovate them sustainably. They rent them out to the workforce, so 33% of the net median income. And then they actually have, as of the last measure, 46 units that are reserved for women and families in transition, typically coming out of abuse situations. And so being able to talk about a financial return, but also invest in women and supporting women and understanding tangibly what that looks like is the best part of my job and a big part of why I love being at Ellevest and why I can never imagine myself anywhere else.
Ugh. Yeah, I'm having major employee envy right now because I can. How can
Well,
you not?
HelloPrenup seems like a pretty awesome spot to be as well, but
We've got some homework to do though. I'm gonna go talk to Julie and be like, listen, we got to do better. This is amazing,
isn't that
absolutely
cool?
amazing. It's so cool because it's so understated, but it's so important. Like
Yeah.
it's reminding us that women are thoughtful, and we're not just
Yes.
thoughtful about ourselves and all the things. Like, how do you pay it forward, right? We
Yes.
are here today having this conversation because we had a long lineage of other women that have been making this conversation
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
so I think the fact that you guys are circling back and making sure that you're paying it forward is absolutely incredible. There's nothing like that.
Well, and I think it boils down to truly, we spent thousands of hours interviewing women, right? We truly are listening and trying to incorporate what they're looking for versus pushing ahead and making assumptions, right?
Right.
Ellevest is not just some pink bow on top of a normal product. It's something that is, okay, what are you looking for? And how do we create that for you? And continuing to iterate on that, hearing that women wanted to invest in women. That's not how Ellevest started. Ellevest really leaned into the impact investing because that's what we are hearing from our clients that they were looking for. And I just think that's a beautiful thing.
One of the things that I really want to discuss is 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Nearly half of women defer to their spouse on money decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And but this is the one where my brain literally like went through a version update and was like, what? Was only about 20% of couples make long-term financial decisions together.
Yeah.
What do we do about that? So I'm hearing if the end statement is if we don't talk about long-term finances together, the potential of this relationship actually could go down, right?
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to think about this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because then we might be disjointed in where we want to be in 10 years, right? Do
Right.
we want to prioritize that dollar? Do we want to prioritize our time together? Right? There's so many different ways of how that actually comes to fruition and how we see that show up daily. And it's a hard thing. I get it. It sucks like being the first one to have this conversation because that's the reality is we are going to have to go first. Whether it's talking to our partner or talking to our friends around money, we are the ones that are responsible for breaking that stigma if we want it to actually change. But it makes things better. It's my brother actually sent me a quote recently around how like fear is a mile wide but an inch deep. And that first step is terrifying. But it's really once we like step into it, it becomes so much easier and so much less intimidating.
That is so good. Do you know who Brene Brown is?
Oh my God, yeah.
All I think about is her little voice in my head when I'm in fear and she goes, when it's feeling tough, that stay in it, stay strong. Like you like, and I'm just Brene Browning myself like through the fear. Anyway, to your
Mine is
point.
mine is Glennon Doyle. We can do hard things.
Yeah. which is way
Yes, we
easier and
can.
more articulate. So I'm going to still take that one.
Well, it's
Thank
just
you.
shorter. It's just shorter.
It's way easier to get out versus Brene's whole speech that I've got going on up in here all the time. Oh, God. Mothers of younger children remain less likely to participate in the labor force than mothers with older children. Almost 68% of mothers with children under age 6 participated in the labor force,
Mhm.
compared with almost 77% of mothers whose youngest child was age 6 to 17. By
Mhm.
contrast, fathers with children under age 6 were more likely to participate in the labor force than those whose youngest child was 6 to 17. Okay, the point of this is women are more likely to hit the motherhood
Yes.
penalty. Can we talk more about that?
Yes. I mean, the
Okay,
expectation is that we play that gender role that we are supposed to play. That generations before us have expected that the female is the caretaker. And it doesn't matter if she had this high power job or if she wants to
right.
work in some cases, because that childcare doesn't really start until kindergarten. The burden in a lot of cases falls on women. And then you think about even like, yes, we can have parental leave, but trying to nurse and do all the things, it's a lot. There's emotional labor that is not accounted for, whether it's taking care of the kids, whether it's, cleaning the home, things that just inherently are expected of the woman. And again, I feel like incrementally we're seeing some shifts in some relationships, but it's hurting us. And it can cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, over our lifetime.
For sure. And I think there's a lot of women that genuinely want to do that and they
Mhm.
struggle. They're like, I'm about to leave my career that I absolutely love, that
Yes.
I've worked so hard for. But at the same time, I really do want to stay home with my babies
Mhm.
because these years are so
Yes.
precious and it's physically demanding and blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. What other things can we be doing to prepare for that motherhood penalty? Should we be getting a second job? I heard you can earn more, which depletes the amount that you have to save so you can still get those Starbucks. Is there a set and forget app that we should be using that just like reinvests your whatever? Like, is there literally anything else we could be using or doing?
So I would say a couple of things. I would
Yeah,
say your set it and forget it, I think is the concept of dollar cost averaging, which is just in like every single month or week, what have you, you're automatically transferring money into an account that's going to continue to compound, right? So it's
perfect.
at a set amount, it's continuing to grow for you. The other part is staying engaged with your community. So if you want to take those however many years off to be there with your baby, don't stop networking during that period of time, right? Stay engaged in the industry with employers, with sponsors, with mentors. Stay engaged because, come the first day of kindergarten, if that's when you want to try again, you're needing to rebuild 5 years worth of community building. And as women, we are all about the community. And I think in a lot of cases, we will, try to lift one another up. I hope we will try to lift one another up. But if we can stay engaged, whether it's through work, through community, through some sort of component during that time period, I think it's going to be helpful.
That's such a good one. The networking, that is so
Mhm.
good. It's small but mighty. And
Mhm.
especially when you become a mom, I feel like our networking skills become like out of this world because you've now joined a new community of women that just
Yep.
want to help others. Like we're
Yep.
helping others all day long, our little ones, but now there's this like mother to mother, how can I
Mhm.
help you in other ways and
Well,
connect you with so and so? That's so brilliant. It's so
I
brilliant.
actually just had a client review the other day. And in all of my client reviews, we review their financial goals and their social goals. And, she wanted to reiterate one of my goals is to help other moms. I want to invest in moms.
Ugh,
And, something that we can do, right? I love it.
women are amazing.
They are. They
We
are.
just
We actually reinvest 90% of our income back into our communities, our families, nonprofits. Like it's amazing to see the exponential effect when you give a woman a dollar.
I'm just sitting here just so
Yeah.
amazed with all the things we've talked about. Is there I'm having like an oh my god, that was so amazing hangover. Is there anything else you want to cover?
When women do reach out to the wealth management industry, 65% of Gen Z women and about half of millennial women say that they want to work with a female financial advisor, which makes sense, right? We look at money media and the Jim Cramers of the world are literally designed around an ESPN gamification type of feel. And so they want to work with somebody who gets it, who's there to communicate at their level, who's there to explain. And I can't tell you how many women too just want a safe space where they can ask questions. I've had people tell me, I asked a question and the advisor turned and answered my husband when she was the one that asked the question. Right? I know. And so being able to have that environment, I think is incredible. When we survey women, which is quite frequently, exactly 0% of women think the financial industry was built for them in mind, which again, going back to that is data proof.
Also, you cannot pull the wool over women's eyes.
No.
If you like this episode, please share with someone you know and subscribe. We do this show for you and pride ourselves on offering high quality education to our listeners for free to help each of you get on the same page prior to marriage.